Hi, John here. Sorry it's been a few weeks since my last video. I've been on holiday doing this. Hang on, why am I saying sorry? It was a fantastic holiday. Anyway, my CNC machine is fixed. All I can say is, welcome back, Mr. Lister, sir. Anyway, so I finished off milling my barnacle molds from resin. I've been playing around with scale, design for ages now, so it does feel like a milestone getting these done. It really does, it's the small things. Let's get casting. Mold wax from Mold Life Release Agent, link down below. Good coverage and leave for about 10 minutes. We can prepare our silicon whilst that's drying. I'm using Platsil 10, again from Mold Life, link down below. About 40 grams of part A and part B will do it for this amount of barnacles. When you actually look at the barnacles on Davy, they can have some quite colourful tips to them. Mostly though, the base of each barnacle is dark grey or brown, maybe dark blue. It's always easier to paint darker with silicon than to paint lighter. So I'm casting my barnacles as a slightly warm, very light ivory colour. As I'm using Mold Life silicon, I'm also using Mold Life silicon dyes. The very smallest touch of brown at first, mix that in, bit of white. Next I'm making up some orange and adding a touch of that in, only a very small amount. Lastly some black, just to darken it a bit. I did put a bit too much in there, so I've taken some of the black out. Mix well, and that's our colour. Sorry about that. Casting's easy. Just pour it over and push into each barnacle mould. Blow on it, push the silicon into the very bottoms of the moulds as you want to minimise air bubbles. When I go into mass production on these, I will use my vacuum chamber, but for this test, I'm not worried. Scrape off the excess as you want as flat a base as you can possibly get. Once cured, depending on the weather, it should take about 20 or 30 minutes. Demold, I'm using a bradawl as it's a pointy yet blunt tool. They should just pop out with very minimal effort. You might break some of the smaller ones, but I wouldn't worry. Sea life is never perfect anyway. And there we go, our first batch of barnacles. For this test, I'm going to cover this small sample of grey fabric that I've got. It could be part of his waistcoat or his overcoat, something like that. More Platsil 10, no dye this time. For now, I just want to vaguely stick my barnacles onto the fabric. Spread a bit onto your material and place your casts on top. Before painting, I've mixed a small amount of Platsil 10 again, and I'm adding sand. Typical builder's sand you can get from B&Q. This does two things. It further seals the edges of the barnacles to the cloth, but more importantly, it gives a much more crusty, thousands of year old sea look to proceedings. Well, it will stay with me. Paint around the edges of your barnacles, but avoid filling the middles up. I think it looks much better if the hole in the middle stays clear. On to painting. I've mixed a small amount of silicon again and dyed it dark grey. I've also thinned it with a small amount of bog standard white spirit. If you look at Davy, the base of his barnacles do blend in with the colour of the material they are on. It's subtle, but it goes a long way. It allows the sea life to really become one with his costume. So here I'm painting the smaller barnacles and the base of the larger barnacles. I'm covering the small ones completely as you want that texture and interest if you get close to the costume, but from a distance they do almost need to disappear into the fabric, and you should only be picking out the larger, more prominent ones. I've seen this with other Davy Jones costumes I've come across. They are just covered from head to toe in glued on shells, and it just becomes visual noise. You need to pick and choose where you want the eye of your onlookers to go. You can paint the larger ones, but then do dab it off with a cloth. It remains in all the cracks and crevices, really emphasising the shapes of the barnacles. It does look good. Swapping colours, I found if you give the tips a white, an orange or some other bold colour, it really helps, and let that cure. Now this is where it transforms from looking a bit crappy to looking pretty good in my opinion. Sprinkle some talcum powder over the entire piece. Start to brush it into all the details. Once that's done, brush it off. Or in my case, hit it hard between your hands until the excess comes off. It works. This really does make the silicone and the sand in the silicone look like old, hard, crusty rock. As you can see, it looks great, but it also is still completely flexible. You could easily wear this as a costume and still be able to walk around. More to the point, anyone who might brush past you whilst you're wearing it won't hurt themselves on your rock-solid coral formations. Here's another one I've done, this time on leather. I'd almost say the leather one was more convincing. Considering this is my first test, I'm pretty happy. It needs tweaking, things always do, you never get it right first time. I could do with more fabric left bare between the clusters of barnacles, and less sanded silicone overall, but you live and learn. I can't wait to see Mark 234 of this process. For areas like this, I think it's a pretty good real life match. Right, see you on the next video.